It's that time of year again. Halloween, the time for all things spooky and scary, things that go bump in the night. Now, this might shock you, but despite living as a shadow man for a decade, I've never had a high tolerance for horror, unless it's something like a billion years old, like the first couple of Silent Hill games. But yeah, I can't really stomach gore that you find in most horror films today, and if there's an acceptable use of the jump scare, I haven't found it yet. However, despite this, I really do tend to like this time of the year, and that's because there's a lot of stuff out there that uses the Halloween aesthetic without being truly horror, especially in the realm of animation and children's content, especially if you know where to look. You got things like Nightmare Before Christmas and Coraline, but you've also got things like the Harry Potter series, which really does feel like a Halloween series. And cartoons give me no shortage of things to work with. Gravity Falls, Real Monsters, Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, and today's video, Courage the Cowardly Dog. Courage is definitely a show that I've talked about before, but it's been a while, and I've never given a review to the show as a whole. So I think that it's a great place to start the 2022 Halloween special. Yes, we're actually doing something this year. To put it mildly, Courage the Cowardly Dog was and is one of my favorite shows of all time, ever since it aired in the late 90s. It really spoke out to me in a way that its contemporaries didn't. It wasn't particularly as funny as Ed, Edd n Eddy, and it didn't have the action that the Powerpuff Girls did. But it was the one that I would select and stay up late for ahead of everything else. And why was that? Well, since it is Halloween, let's start with the horror aspect. Courage the Cowardly Dog could be quite the dark series, going for more outright horror than even Grim Adventures, which was a comedy through and through despite its more grim archetypes. Some of its most memorable episodes were as such because they scared a lot of people back in the day. Freaky Fred, King Ramses' Curse, and just about any episode with cats. King Ramses' Curse is an episode that especially scared more than a few in my house growing up. And it's funny because it's an episode that's not really scary today. I don't mean that I don't find it scary, but like new people who go back to the show tend to watch the episode and wonder what the big deal was.
This night you will be visited by 3 plagues, each worse than the last. Return the slab.
With that episode specifically, I think that it's the CGI. Courage the Cowardly Dog often used other animation styles for horror effects. One of the more famous ones was the fetus trumpet from Perfect. I think it's because the CGI aged particularly poorly. I don't mean it was really good or anything groundbreaking back in the day. It was out of date even when the show was airing, but I think that's why people found it scary back in the day. It was in the uncanny valley, more so than anything you could have animated in 2D. Nowadays though, the uncanny valley has moved. On top of that, we've seen plenty of actually terrible CGI stuff, whether it be these weird foreign films, strange YouTube abominations, or things in that realm. Something like King Ramses or the trumpet doesn't come across as so scary anymore. That's not to say that the show doesn't have any horror appeal, it's just moved around a bit. In terms of visual horror, Cabaret Courage still holds up as one of the show's most underrated scary episodes, because the episode takes place entirely in the body of this monstrous lounge singer, and you get to see all of his pulsating organs. It's quite uncomfortable, really. I originally put House of Discontent on my most disturbing cartoons episode list, and I still do think that that's a candidate, because while the CGI doesn't hold up all that well, some effects like this weird ghost head do. The Great Fusilli is another one, where the villain straight up is trying to turn Muriel and Eustace into puppets. And he succeeds! This is how the first season ends, by the way.
Nice evening, isn't it, Eustace?
Long as it don't rain. Stupid dog! Ooga booga booga!
And if the show wasn't renewed, this is how the series would have ended. Why does this remind me of something that I should be doing right now? Heads of Beef is also another good episode where the tension is just ramped up as you wonder what this diner might be doing. Most of the episodes I mentioned have come from the first season, and I think that's because after the first season, the show focused on other things besides horror. That's not to say that the future seasons were a downgrade or anything, it's just that it put areas of focus in other places. Although the show could still pull out a really creepy episode once in a while, like The Mask. This is one that I guess you could call it reviewed way back in the day. It was Admirable Animation number 2, I think. So you can guess how well I did about it. The Mask was one of the most stark portrayals of an outright abusive relationship and themes of prejudice that you'd get on a kid's show.
You want to make me second rate? If I even smell kitty, I'll bury the two of you. Oh, buddy, you know you're my girl. Everything's okay.
Huh? No! No! Not another
There are no milkshake metaphors here. Kitty's boyfriend buries her in a giant plant pot, which also might be a metaphor for something a lot harsher. This one comes across as a lot more disturbing because, despite the villain being a dog, he comes across as a lot more human than, say, a weremole or a random ghost or whatever. It's a kind of monster that you might encounter in your day-to-day life. It also makes Kitty and Bunny's eventual escape at the end all the sweeter.
Thank you. Bunny! Kitty! He saved my life!
I was wrong, Bunny. Not all dogs are bad. Now we can be best friends forever. Thank you, dog.
Although, I do have to say, and this might be a bit controversial, in terms of pure horror, Courage the Cowardly Dog isn't the standout that one might think. It does have a lot of really disturbing and scary episodes, and on an episode-by-episode basis, it's definitely up there. It's not Invader Zim, but it is quite high, especially for the time period before you had things like Gravity Falls. However, at the same time, Powerpuff Girls was on the air, and some episodes of the Powerpuff Girls like Speed Demon, Knock It Off, or Abracadabra go further than any individual Courage the Cowardly Dog episode did. Yeah, actually, there are plenty of Powerpuff episodes that I recommend watching for this time of year. Hey Arnold too. Courage could get creepy, but it didn't have any episode about a ghost bride that gets people decapitated, is all I'm saying. Courage the Cowardly Dog's strength was actually its softer side. While it billed itself as a horror-themed show, it went for more heart than most other shows of its time. Ed, Edd n Eddy and Powerpuff Girls also had heart, but Courage went a little bit stronger in that department. The characters were simple, but they had a connection that really made you care for them and the relationship. Not so much Eustace though. He was the asshole that you laughed at when he got his comeuppance, for doing whatever selfish thing he was doing. It really is the bond between Courage and Muriel that made the show work. She was this sweet, ditzy old lady who often got herself into all kinds of trouble, and it was up to Courage, who, despite being terrified out of his mind, would do anything, face any monster to save her. And each of these characters stand nicely on their own too. After Courage knows not to be afraid of someone or something, he can make these absolutely beautiful connections. My list of favorites of the show isn't built on the horror episodes like Demon of the Mattress. My favorites, the ones that I remember from the show most fondly, are episodes like Hunchback of Nowhere, or The Magic Tree of Nowhere. Episodes that are just built on sweet moments and a charm that is rarely captured today. I think that's why people tend to pick Little Muriel as their least favorite episode of the show. In that episode, a twister makes Muriel a little kid, and she spends the entire episode being a brat to Courage for no reason. If you don't find that funny, well, you're not going to enjoy that episode, because it goes against the show's formula in a not very fun way. Besides, we got Eustace to be the brat. I dunk on Eustace a lot. He makes a great foil, and he is really easy to hate. He's always pushing Courage around with his mask, launching verbal abuse at him, and letting his greed drive him into places that usually start the episode's problem. But he is still likable in terms of an antagonist.
Well, you look like something the cow spit up.
You, sir, are extremely bald.
Yeah, you...
It's fun and funny to see him get beaten up. And I will say, it's nothing short of magic that can make this character terrifying in an episode like Hunchback of Nowhere, and then let you celebrate a human moment with him in Shirley the Medium. It also really says good things about Courage's character, where he does try to save Eustace if he can, in episodes like Queen of the Black Puddle. The show has a great way of pulling at your heartstrings. There is so many episodes I could gush on about that level alone, like Robot Randy or Shadow Courage. Many I already have. My first admirable was to the episode Last of the Star Makers, which Courage is trying to save the eggs of a space squid from military goons. It's hard not to love the episode when it opens up with one of the most beautiful sequences that you'll find in a standard episodic animated show, where the father space squid basically sacrifices himself to send the mother on her way before she crash lands on Earth. The soundtrack, which is used for only this episode, helps bring it to an absolutely new height. I don't tend to notice background music in terms of standard cartoons. The common tracks that you'll get in SpongeBob or Ed, Edd n Eddy, or even something similar to Courage like Gravity Falls, they blend into the background, for lack of a better term. For all intents and purposes, they may as well not even have background music. Courage the Cowardly Dog does have its stock background music that you'll hear every time a certain situation comes up, but important episodes have very beautiful custom pieces for just that episode alone. And episodes like Star Makers, Remembrance of Courage Past, and The Tower of Lost, the music really does set the stage and heighten the mood and emotion better than most other cartoons. Hey Arnold and My Life as a Teenage Robot are, I think, the only ones ones that come close into how well they use background music. When I started Admirable Animations, I did call Last of the Star Makers my favorite episode of all time. Like, of any show ever. And it's still definitely highly regarded by me. But I don't know if I would call it my absolute favorite in this day and age. For one, I've seen many other pieces of media and broadened my horizons something fierce in the past decade. However, as a more mature soul, it's not even the episode of Courage the Cowardly Dog that speaks out to me most today. Last of the Star Makers is touching and endearing. The episode Mute and Muriel is more meaningful, and that's why it is my favorite episode of the show. It's a simple concept, really. When Eustace acts like Eustace and pretends to ignore Muriel, she decides that she's not speaking again. Ever. Of course, Courage wants to help, so he speaks to Shirley the Medium, who summons Patrick Star without his makeup on, which goes on to destroy everything in its path.
No! My name's not Rick!
Of course, Muriel refuses to speak no matter what, until Courage does the only thing that he could think of to get her to speak, and lays down in front of the starfish monster, waiting to get destroyed by it. And that moment really ramps up the tension. But in the end, she does speak, and learns the power that her voice has.
Did I stop it? With my voice? I guess what I say does matter. At least to a huge, ugly creature. And to you. Yay! Oh, Courage, I'll never stop talking again.
And I suppose that brings us to the sadder fact of this retrospective. The voice actress of Muriel, Thea White, passed away in 2021. Her final work was a crossover film of Courage the Cowardly Dog and Scooby-Doo, released after her death. This is a movie that I have actually been dreading talking about for this reason and this reason alone, so let me word things as gently as I can. Thea White is who made Muriel as a character. She had a perfect performance all the way through, and one of the aspects that I liked about the crossover film Straight Outta Nowhere is her performance and how much the movie actually gave her to do. She has a larger role than she usually does in the show, which is usually focused on Courage, who she can't really hear talk. Muriel gets to interact with Mystery Inc., and it gets across the gentler, grandmotherly part of her personality well, and Thea White did a great job with it. However, the movie itself, Straight Outta Nowhere, has very few other good aspects. It badly misunderstands the property of Courage the Cowardly Dog, to the point where the creator, John R. Dilworth, had nothing to do with the film itself. It has, in my opinion, the absolute worst way of doing fan service. Through the film, we see pictures, screenshots of various stills from the show Courage. In the mayor's mansion, we see all kinds of artifacts that any Courage the Cowardly Dog fan knows would be gone, lost, or destroyed. Despite having pictures from every single episode, it loses a lot of the facts that were established within the show. The worst part of the film, though, is that it explains the magic, which is the worst thing that you could do with a franchise like Courage the Cowardly Dog, and it showcases why this crossover was a terrible idea in the first place, despite having two cowardly dogs. Scooby-Doo is all about finding reality and solving the mystery, but the mystery is what makes Courage the Cowardly Dog. Why is there a demon in the mattress? Doesn't matter. It's better if you don't know. No, I mean, like, from a storytelling perspective, it's better if you don't know, because that makes the demon in the mattress scarier. And now you gotta deal with this thing from the shadows. This movie gives an explanation as to why all the things are happening in nowhere, which really does hamper the magic of the show. You can explain the magic all you want, but when you make the magic mundane, it's no longer magic. Also, Eustace raps in it.
I'm a well-to-do dude with a 1% freaking nightmare. Like a bank tycoon or the president, say if I care. Taking charge, living large with the bourgeoisie out of nowhere. Out of nowhere.
Whoever thought this was a good idea, I'll never know. Let's just say I've heard better.
Stupid dog! You made me look bad!
It gives me very mixed feelings that this is probably going to be the last new Courage the Cowardly Dog thing that we will ever see. I mean, I guess in a way it functions as a finale, but even if you used these exact same characters going forward, it really is the performances that make them in this case. Fog of Courage made it clear to me that anyone in the role of Eustace who wasn't Lionel Wilson or Arthur Anderson is literally inconceivable.
Who cares? I'm gonna be rich! Filthy rich!
And yes, I am using that word correctly, by the way. I cannot conceive of any other person, any other voice that would work as Muriel Bagg. To be fair, I doubt that anyone could make Eustace rapping sound palpable. There was definitely novelty to seeing these old characters again, as the title said, straight out of nowhere. And it is something that I can discount as non-canon. So what if one finale is bad? The show had 3 others. with Remembrance of Courage Past being a beautiful origin story, perfect about the dog finally beating his own insecurities, and Ball of Revenge, which was more of a missed opportunity than something truly bad, and something I probably never should have reviewed. It's going to take something more than a misdirected movie to taint my memories of the show. Courage the Cowardly Dog is still an absolutely beautiful show. Not every episode is amazingly top tier, but it has more gems, like truly standout gems, than most shows even today. The worst Courage episodes are a little bit annoying. The best Courage episodes are some of the best that you will ever see.
Ah, Courage, you're part of the miracle of birth, you are.